Welcome to the Plant-Centered and Thriving podcast. I'm your host, Ashley Kitchens. Welcome to the show, Plant-Centered listener. My name is Ashley and I'm your host today. If you're watching this episode, I'm tucked away in my closet right now because my neighbor has his wood chopper running and it's really loud. So that's why it's a bit dark. Now, today I am really excited to announce our series for the next couple weeks in preparation for the Mr. America event, which is taking place October 6th through October 8th. And I got to be on the team this year and as part of the CrossFit team. And I'm really excited just to interview some of my teammates, some of the founders of the PlantBuilt team, and honestly just get really geared up and geeked out for this upcoming event. So today I have one of the founders. I'm going to interview her. So I'm really excited to share her story with you. And then over the next couple of weeks, you'll hear from other athletes. You'll also hear from another founder as we talk about their life and how they have tapped into nutrition, specifically vegan nutrition, to really excel in their sport. And their stories are just absolutely incredible. I was very honored to just learn more about them and their own personal journey when it came to going vegan. So it's just been really cool to listen to. So to give you just a brief overview about what the VeganStrong PlantBuilt team is, we are set to make a powerful statement at the Mr. America All-American Sports Festival and Expo, which again takes place October 6th through October 8th of this year in Atlantic City, New Jersey. This team has a record-breaking number of 40 plus athletes competing in 5 different sports, including powerlifting, bodybuilding, CrossFit, strongman, and kettlebell sport. And the team aims to showcase its peak athletic performance on a cruelty-free, plant-based diet. Y'all, we have people coming from all over the world, including Australia, Norway, France, and Canada, which just demonstrates the global reach and impact of the vegan athletic movement. And I feel so honored to be a part of it. This is the world's largest team of vegan athletes. The VeganStrong PlantBuilt team has a mission to really just bring home medals and prove that compassion and athleticism can coexist. Just because you're vegan doesn't mean you're any less of an athlete or doesn't mean you're any less strong. We can compete with anyone there, which is really exciting. So today I have one of the founders, Dani Taylor, on the show, and she has a really unique story in how she was raised in a household that just didn't value a healthy lifestyle. It wasn't part of her upbringing. Money was scarce, and she said that macaroni and cheese with hot dogs were a regular meal. She ended up becoming vegetarian at an early age, which I'll let her tell that whole story. But she just continued to struggle with her weight and her health. And eventually she came across this vegan bodybuilder and forum, and her life just completely changed. And it was really cool to hear her story. And I felt so honored to be able to listen to it. She and her husband, Giacomo, which Giacomo we'll hear from him in a few days, they started Vegan Proteins, which is an online vegan coaching hub, and they also founded the PlantBuilt team, which again is the world's largest team of vegan strength athletes. And they now tour the country with the VeganStrong team, and they really just try to promote a vegan fitness lifestyle, which, is so exciting. Okay, so I'm getting all jazzed up for this episode and honestly just for the next several episodes as we gear up for the Mr. America event. So let's kick off this first episode of the series with Dani Taylor. So I would love, Dani, for you to take us back to kind of how things started with your vegan journey back in high school, or no, even earlier than that, right?
Yeah, earlier than that. So I grew up in a household where we didn't have a lot of money and we ate very poorly, largely for that reason. And not too surprisingly, everybody in my family, my extended family, was overweight. So I always just thought that was sort of a genetic thing because my whole family looked like that. And I also looked like that. I did go vegetarian at a really young age. I went vegetarian when I was 8, actually.
Okay. What
yeah.
sparked that?
So I was at a cookout with some like extended family, and we're little. They send all the kids like, go play in the basement, basically. So we go down to the basement, and there's a kiddie pool in the basement. with a lobster in it, like a big lobster with the
Oh,
claws and like the bands around the claws and everything like that. And we're kids. We think this is the coolest thing we've ever seen. Like, we're hanging out with this lobster all day. And then, of course, in the afternoon, unbeknownst to us, someone came down, took the lobster, brought it upstairs. We all ran after them, and they put it in the pot. And
yeah.
it was horrifying. And that really got me thinking about how horrible it was that we like eat animals. Like, even making the connection that a chicken nugget is actually a chicken, like that hadn't really clicked in my little kid brain. But I remember talking to my mom about it, like, well, why do we eat animals? And she's like, because we do. And I was like, well, do we have to? And she was like, well, some people don't. And I was like, cool. I'm going to be one of those people then.
Yep.
Yeah. But I did eat dairy and eggs and all of that for until I was 16 years old. So it was around that time up until I was 16 years old that I was getting bigger and bigger and bigger until I was about 216 pounds by the time I was 16 years old.
Mm.
And it was an English class. I was writing a paper about vegetarianism. You know, they say, pick a topic you want to write about. And I was like, I'll write about vegetarianism. And this had to be like 2002, 2001,
Oh,
something like that.
so well before people really even were talking about it.
Yes. And the internet, like it existed, but it was very different than it is now.
Yep.
But I stumbled across this website in doing my research that talked about how the dairy and egg industry were basically just as cruel as the meat industry and how one sort of fed the other. Again, things I had never, ever even considered in my life. And I went vegan poorly, but I went vegan overnight. Like I was just like, that's it.
Wow.
I'm not doing this anymore. I didn't know any other vegans. I didn't know anything about veganism. I just knew I didn't want to be a part of that. So I went vegan overnight.
Wow. I mean, was there any concern with like your teachers, your family, your friends, parents?
Yeah, my parents were not happy. In fact, I remember my dad like cried because he thought
Oh,
that I was gonna die.
oh
Um,
gosh, that's traumatic.
yeah, I mean, I was 16 and kind of a punk, so I didn't really like, I was gonna do what I was gonna do regardless. And I think that's probably why they were so upset, was because they knew they weren't gonna be able to stop me from
Yeah.
doing this. But even though I was a good vegan in that I wasn't eating animal products, but I didn't know anything about nutrition. I ate what teenagers eat, just vegan, which was French fries, Coca-Cola, plain bagels with nothing on them, like very just what was available at the time that happened to not have animal products. And the craziest thing happened, which was I went for a doctor's appointment, like a physical, a few months later, and the first thing they do is they put you on the scale. And they put me on the scale and I was like 186 pounds or something. And I had lost 30 pounds in a few months without trying, without paying attention. Probably not the way I would advise someone try to lose 30 pounds, but
Sure.
that's what happened. And the doctor said something like, whatever you're doing, it's working, keep
Mm.
doing it. And I remember my brain going like, oh my goodness, maybe this isn't as genetic as I thought. Maybe what I'm eating actually will contribute to this. And that is what sparked me to actually learn something about nutrition and inspired me to start exercising and actually deliberately taking steps to make myself a healthier person. And it was very, very successful. So
Yeah.
that's kind of how it all started.
Yes, and we know how successful you are, which I'm excited to get into because not only did you do the opposite of die, I mean, I feel like you really thrived, not just with the vegan lifestyle, with what you're doing now, but also getting into the bodybuilding world, which I cannot wait to hear more about, kind of like how that came about, because here you are, I mean, not new to this vegan journey, a few years into it, and then you're introduced to this whole other world. And how did that come to be?
So like I mentioned, I didn't know any vegans. I didn't have any vegan friends. But there was a veg fest happening in Boston when I was like, I guess I was probably 18 years old. And I was like, I want to go to that. And I went there and just walking around all the booths like all the veg fests are, but I could see the list of speakers. And Robert Cheek, who is still the godfather of vegan bodybuilding, was giving a talk, and it said vegan bodybuilding talk. And I was like, oh my God, we have to go.
Yes. Oh, yeah. If anyone knows Robert Cheek, you're like, yes, you cannot not go.
Yeah, and I didn't know who he was. I didn't know anything about him, which is funny now. But we went to the talk. It was great. He gave us a little pamphlet at the end, which had a meal plan, which was, I still have it. It's the most ridiculous meal plan I've ever seen. But it had his website, veganbodybuilding.com, on it. So I went there, and it was like pre-Facebook. I mean, maybe Facebook existed, but you couldn't get on it unless you were like in a school. And it was a forum. So there were like 1,500 to 2,000 other vegan athletes in this forum who were all just trying to figure it out. That's the only way I can explain it. There wasn't a lot of information for us. So we were all trying to figure out how to build muscle, lose fat, be fit, be healthier by experimenting and kind of playing off one another. And yeah, it was amazing. It's a golden era.
I was going to say, because I'm sure back then, like the misconceptions were so much greater than what they are now when it comes to protein and plants and vegan bodybuilding and all of that.
Yeah, in the outside world, it definitely was. There were a lot of pretty crazy things people were saying within our community as well. We just didn't know that at the time.
Yep.
Yep. So many people trying to build muscle while they're juice fasting and things like that, that in hindsight, it's like, what were we doing? But we were all just trying to figure out what we were doing, I guess. And a lot of good stuff did end up coming out of it. And then Robert and Giacomo and I, we all met on the same weekend. Robert hosted a vegan bodybuilding like vacation in 2008.
Oh, okay.
And we all met in person at the same time. And Giacomo is obviously my husband now. And Robert he's practically my brother. He's like one of my best friends on earth. And it's been a long 15 years since then, but that's how it all kind of got started.
Okay. So this is how you were first introduced to Giacomo then as well.
Yes.
Okay.
He was in the forum. He was also one of the people in the forum. He was lean and green in the forum, and I was then Dani Says in the forum, and we just got along very well as friends. Didn't expect to hit it off, but obviously we did.
Yeah. Because we'll definitely hear his side of the story too. So I'm excited to catch both of y'all and how you kind of met. That's really neat. So then how did it progress to kind of where you are today? Because here you are, you're a few years into vegan. You just meet Robert Cheek. You're part of this forum. And then how did things sort of transpire after that?
So the forum was a huge part of all of our lives, really. And you would post, your own training journal, and you could comment on other people's training journals, et cetera. We were all trying to encourage one another. And I guess over the years, I got a bit of a reputation. While this was all happening, there was also a lot of silly stuff I was seeing, like the juice fasting and trying to build muscle while you're, et cetera. And I was just remember thinking, like, this doesn't make sense. Like, there's got to be a better way. So I started really, really trying to research in nutrition and learn as much as I could about nutrition and bodybuilding specifically. And because of that, I guess I had a lot of really good advice for people when I was writing in the forum. And eventually, over the years, people started asking me, hey, can you help? Can you actually coach me? Can you help me do X, Y, Z? And at the time, I didn't really have any credentials, so I didn't really feel very good about officially doing that. So sometimes I would just trade with people like, yeah, I'll do it, but just know I don't know what I'm doing. So bear with me. Over the years, I did get various types of credentials so that I feel much better about doing that, and have learned a lot since the beginning as well. But that's kind of how I built this reputation as a vegan bodybuilding coach. So I actually coached bodybuilders before I ever became one, because I'm just kind of a nerd at heart.
Yes, definitely.
But with my history of obesity, I just didn't think that was actually going to be in the cards for me at any point.
Yeah. And how did things start to shift there? Because you were kind of struggling with your own, your weight that you'd struggled with for a very long time, even like, maybe family. I don't know what was kind of their response to you also getting into the fitness space?
Well, at first they picked on me. They still maybe pick on me a little bit for it. But, at this point it had been probably almost a decade that I had been vegan. I had lost, I think in total, 90 pounds. A lot of the health problems that I had prior to going plant-based, like polycystic ovarian syndrome, there was no longer any sign of that.
Wow.
I still have endometriosis, but it's managed so much better than it was before that. And my family, they were believers after a certain point, and most of my immediate family did actually end up going completely vegan as well.
What?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's part of a story most people don't have. I guess I'm really lucky in that regard.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it sounds like you started feeling better. There were things that were going on maybe when you were in high school that really weren't an issue anymore health-wise. But then because I think where a lot of people struggle is, how did you kind of make that connection with here you're training and coaching other people, and then how does that or where did that light switch come on where like, I can also do this, or I can do this too, or I can be just like them?
Yeah. So we actually started PlantBuilt, which years ago it was just called PlantBuilt. Now it's the VeganStrong PlantBuilt Team.
Yep.
Giacomo and I started PlantBuilt in 2012. And what I'm going to refer to it as VeganStrong PlantBuilt Team, even though it was something else back then. What VeganStrong PlantBuilt Team was a collection at the time of just bodybuilders, vegan bodybuilders from all around the country that got together to compete at one show against the rest of them were non-vegans, and we were hoping to show, look, we can be just as competitive as you guys, and maybe even a little bit more competitive than you guys, and hopefully turn some heads, get some interest peaked in a vegan lifestyle. And I, that first year, was coaching, I think, 4 of the people that were competing because they were asked to be part of the team. And then, weeks into the prep, they were like, I don't know what I'm doing. And Dani, can you help me? So again, I coached these competitive bodybuilders, but the first year I was there, I watched all of my athletes competing on stage. And I just remember thinking, like, I think I can do this. I think maybe I can actually do this. So then in 2014, I decided that I was going to do it as well. So that's when I actually started competing, was in 2014, even though I'd been coaching athletes for longer than that.
Yeah. Wow. When you were coaching too, were you also doing your own like strength routine as going through the whole process there?
Oh yeah, I was still what I call non-competitive bodybuilding, which I actually think is what most people in the gym are doing. They are lifting, they're trying to build muscle in various places. In many ways, they're living the lifestyle. It's just not the diet portion, which I think is the scariest part for most people, and with really good reason also.
Sure.
So it was the dieting portion that I didn't think that I was going to be able to handle. I didn't think my body was going to be able to get lean enough. And that was really scary. But I decided to go for it in 2014. And I'm very glad I did, because there's a lot that you learn on the other side of that that gives you more empathy into what it is like to actually be the athlete. So ultimately, it made me a much better coach also.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, because you like really were in it, immersed in it then. Yeah. Well, and how did that go too for someone who isn't familiar with bodybuilding, kind of what it takes, especially leading up to a competition and during the competition itself? Nutrition is really important. So what, if you kind of just could explain it in layman's terms, maybe like what that kind of looks like?
Yes. So I always like to preface this with there is nothing healthy about competing in bodybuilding. Like, I just have to put that out there for people, because I think in our society, we see a body that looks a certain way and say, oh, that is the epitome of health. I want to do that. When in reality, I can assure you that that person is probably not feeling their best on that day. They're not performing well. They're not sleeping well. Their hormones might be kind of off. And you could say this about any sport that you take to an extreme level, it's going to cross a line. And bodybuilding absolutely crosses a line. It's just there's a much lower barrier of entry. So we see a lot of people diving headfirst into this sport, not really realizing what they're getting themselves into. So I just always like to put that huge caveat out there.
We appreciate that. Yep.
Yeah. This is not a 5K. Don't jump into it, because if you don't know what you're doing, you can hurt yourself and like deal with it for many years. So the main thing with getting ready for a competition is you're still doing the exact same amount of weightlifting that you were doing prior. And generally, you're adding cardio as you get closer and closer to the show, but you're doing all of this with less and less food, because you have to continuously make sure you are in a caloric deficit all the way up to the show. And of course, as you're getting smaller and leaner, your requirements become less and less. And then the longer you're dieting, your requirements become less and less. And, you do keep your protein relatively high the entire time, but your carbohydrates and fats will typically decrease the closer you get to the show. So it's very, very, very calculated. Like, all intuitive eating goes out the window, because your intuition is saying, what are you doing? Eat more food.
Right.
So it's, in many ways, it can be a bit of a minefield for potential disordered eating, or eating disorders, or body dysmorphia, or all those things. So you really, really have to have your head straight on. Know that this is for a finite period of time. You're going to reach the goal, and then you're going to reverse direction, and then deliberately put body fat back on because you need it. Yeah. Not everybody does that. They get there, they try to stay there, and I think that's where a lot of the problems come in. But I never had any problem doing it as a vegan. Like, I never thought that it was particularly more difficult to do it as a vegan. It's just difficult for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
But tofu, tempeh, seitan, nutritional yeast, some of the mock meats that exist, and then other more like whole food, brown rice, oatmeal, broccoli, all of the other whole foods, voluminous foods that you can fit in there are very common.
Yeah. Because the whole purpose of a bodybuilding competition is to, in a very like condensed sense, like show off your muscles, basically, your
Yeah.
physique, right?
I call it a muscle beauty pageant.
Nice. That's great.
Yeah, they don't care what you can do.
Yeah.
And, there's all these arguments to be made against, is this even a sport? I think it is a sport, even though on the competition day, you're not actually performing anything other than making pretty circles while you turn around, basically.
Yep.
But for months leading up to it, I think it's definitely a sport. But at the end of the day, one person on the stage can not actually be very strong or particularly fit, but look amazing.
Yeah.
Somebody next to them can look kind of but, have like a statewide bench press record, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It all comes down to the person who looks the part the best. So you really need to have a very thick skin also at the end of the day, because you're going to have a panel of strangers telling you what's wrong with what you look like.
Yeah, that would be tough.
Yeah, it can be. But if you're able to put some distance between like you as a human being and what you look like and what this sport is, then I think that there's a lot of good that can be taken from the sport as well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that's helpful. And I appreciate the preface too, just to kind of say that this isn't something that really anyone or everyone maybe should or can do. It takes a very special person. Yeah.
It takes a lot of guidance too. Because I mean, even I'm a coach. I've coached hundreds of competitive athletes, but when I compete, I also make sure I have a coach, because we get like almost like beer goggles on for ourselves.
Yeah.
Where we think we look different than we actually look. And it's great to have somebody else watching over your shoulder to make sure you're, doing what you need to do, not doing anything crazy. Very important. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, I know someone is listening and they kind of have this image of like what a bodybuilder looks like. And a common question out there is where does the spray tan come in, or what is that? What is the purpose for that? I know someone has that question.
Yeah. Oh yeah. So the spray tan might be the weirdest part of the whole thing, in my opinion. The spray tan is just to make your muscles show up better on stage, because you're under these incredibly bright lights up there. And I mean, you can clearly see I'm like white as a ghost in real life. So if I were to go up there like this, I would just be completely washed out. You wouldn't be able to see anything. So it's also to make it a more even playing field, because essentially, basically everybody on stage is pretty close to the same color. So nobody has an edge on anybody else. But it is a little bit silly. And you can get marked down if your tan is not like good or even, or if it's splotchy.
Mm-hmm. Oh, so it's a very important part.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and it smells bad too. If you could smell a photo, let me tell you, that tan does not smell good.
I'm sure. Yes. Well, I'm curious too, as a vegan bodybuilder, are there any misconceptions or any challenges that you feel like you face now, maybe even with like your meat eating competitors, or just the common misconceptions that are kind of out there with vegan eating and building muscle anyways?
I think that it's still, for somebody who's new. Let's say I was brand new to veganism. I wanted to follow a plant-based diet, and also I wanted to compete. If I were to have a coach that wasn't vegan, they would probably get frustrated pretty quickly and just be like, well, listen, we can't get your protein where it needs to be without going way over what your carbohydrates and fats need to be. So you're going to have whey protein or eggs or something. You're going to have something to make this more possible. And a lot of newer plant-based people, they just believe it and they just do it. So that, I think, is really challenging, that just the broader bodybuilding scene, it still doesn't, people cannot see how it is possible. And I think it's really just a learning gap. If you know what plant-based foods are higher in protein and lower in these other macronutrients, I mean, to me, it's just really a matter of learning those foods and crunching some numbers, basically, to make that happen. But a lot of people are not willing to do that. I mean, luckily there's all these studies coming out that show that, when protein is equated for plant-based protein is just as good as animal protein at building muscle. Hopefully more people read those studies.
Yes.
But I think that a bigger problem that actually doesn't have to do with being vegan or not, actually has to do with the natural bodybuilding world versus the enhanced bodybuilding world. So can I talk a little bit about
Oh,
that?
absolutely. I'm curious for myself. Yes.
Okay. So there's two types of bodybuilding competitions. There's natural competitions, which is what we do. That's what the VeganStrong PlantBuilt team does. It's why we're doing the Mr. America, because it's a natural show. And what that means is that you cannot take anything on a list of banned substances, the WADA list of banned substances. And there's polygraph tests and urinalysis tests to prove this, basically. Yeah. So it's kind of a pain to have to do those things, but you know, there are people that try to sneak through sometimes, but there's an entire other world, a much, much bigger world that is not natural, not drug tested at all. And the drugs are very, very prevalent. There are certain categories you can't compete if you're not taking something. It's just not possible unless you want to look like the person on stage that isn't supposed to be there.
Sure. Yes.
So, and that's where most of the spotlight is, and that's where most of the money in the sport is. So when the average person thinks bodybuilder, that's what they're thinking.
Yeah.
So then when they see, you know, our team, for example, they're like, oh, well, you're all a bunch of pipsqueaks.
Yep.
It's like, okay, well, it's a different sport. Like, I just have to think of them as different sports entirely. And within the natural bodybuilding world, I think most of our athletes do very, very well. We have a couple like world champions on our team there, and it's just different. But trying to explain that to somebody that doesn't know anything about it, it can come across as being like salty or jealous. Like, no, well, that's because I'm not on drugs and everybody else is on drugs.
Right.
But it is that is kind of the truth. Is that most of the stuff that we see on Instagram and social media, it's from non-drug tested competitions.
Yep. Yeah. So. And that is helpful. I've seen a few people, very, very few on social media who have shown what they look like on drugs versus not on drugs. And it is a big difference. I mean, they're still incredible off drugs, but it's also my muscle size wise, it's a big difference. So that's really helpful.
Yeah. Muscle size, also how lean somebody can get. Cause it's not just steroids. There's a lot of other drugs too that do different things. And I'm not even going to pretend to be an expert in that stuff because I'm not, but it can help you get leaner or look drier or blunt your hunger to the point where dieting isn't even hard anymore, you know?
Wow.
So in the natural world, I mean, you can't, so there are certain prescription drugs that your doctor could give you for legitimate reasons that you're not allowed to take. If you take them, you're out. Like acne medications, there are certain ones you can't take because you'll fail a drug test. So
I did not know that. Wow.
It's very strict, actually. So a lot of people think it's kind of like a joke. Like, sure, they're natural, but really, it's quite strict to get into some of these shows.
Yep. Yeah. Well, speaking of shows, we have the Mr. America competition coming up October 6th through October 8th. And you are competing?
I'm not competing.
Okay.
I'm not competing this year. I have a few clients that are competing in it, but Giacomo and I are running it. Basically, we're putting everything together for it.
Okay, gotcha. Yep. Is there anything, just because I know that you've been part of this for a really long time, you're one of the founders, is there anything specifically that you just really love about these competitions when everyone gets together?
You're gonna see it. It's absolutely insane. There's, in my experience, and I've been vegan for 21 years now, there is nothing else that I have ever experienced like seeing, like, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it, seeing this amount of talent from all over the world come into the same space, and they're all there to promote veganism. Like, yes, everybody is a fantastic athlete in their own right, but when we all come together, we're all there for one specific message that we're trying to get out to other people. And to be an elite athlete, to be a vegan, and to be in strength sports specifically, like, how often do you find other people that tick all of those boxes, and suddenly you're in a room with 40 of them, and you're gonna go like kick some non-vegan butt at the same time. Like, it's really magic. And I was afraid when we started it, I guess I was like 26 or something, and now I'm 37, and I thought, like, we're all getting older, maybe this won't be as fun. We obviously didn't do it through COVID. Nope. Last year when we all got together, I was like, nope, this is just as awesome as it ever was. So super, super pumped. And we have more sports than we've ever had before also this year.
I had no idea that Mr. America had branched out to so many different sports. And then now the VeganStrong PlantBuilt team is part of so many of them as well.
Mhm. Yeah, we have bodybuilding, powerlifting, CrossFit, kettlebell, and strongman is a totally new competition for us this year.
Oh,
So
awesome.
very, very excited. And it's
Yeah.
all happening like at the same time, which is the craziest thing. Like it's multiple days, but for example, the bodybuilding show and CrossFit and kettlebell all happened at the same time last year. So if you wanted to see them, you had to like run around to see everybody competing and cheer them on and then run off and then powerlifting was pretty much on its own the following day.
Okay.
So everybody got to sit in the crowd and just cheer for them. It's really amazing. And more importantly, like by the end of it, other people are like, okay, what's with the vegans? Like, what's the
Right.
vegan thing that's happening? And people are asking, and that's what we hope for.
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, because everyone's walking around in their plant-built shirt or vegan shirt. And so, and
Mhm.
everyone kind of, it's all similar colors that people are wearing. And so it's like, okay, this group, and everyone's energetic. I saw the footage from last year. It just seems like, how could that energy not be contagious?
Yeah, and we have so much stuff to give away too because of our sponsors. They give us all of this product that we get to then put in brand new people's hands. So maybe people that have only ever had whey protein, that's all they've ever used. Now they're going to have an opportunity to try a plant-based protein, and maybe they don't go vegan, maybe they don't even come close, but maybe they just swap out one thing, and all of that is going to help them. It's going to help the planet, and it's going to help the animals.
Yeah, yeah. And we have some really great sponsors, which is cool. It's been nice to partake in some of the product and share it on social media and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so excited.
Oh, I can't
A
wait.
lot of work. It's a lot of work to make sure this goes off without a hitch because it's like
Yeah.
40 people flying in from all over, getting everybody situated in the hotel and
Yep.
the photo shoots and stuff like that. But it's going to be worth it. Totally.
Yep, definitely. Right now, we're also fundraising for the event. So I would love for you to
Mhm.
kind of touch on that just a little bit.
Yeah. So as I've probably made pretty clear by talking about it, it's a very, very big event. And we do have some sponsors, largely like product sponsors, which is fantastic and helps get the athletes through. But it is also a very expensive event to put on. And Vegan Strong is a not-for-profit. So we operate with our sponsors, but this particular event is so huge that we really do need the help of our community to help pull it off. So our fundraiser this year, every year we've had a fundraiser and they've always been very successful. Every year we make a new design, like a new hoodie and t-shirt design, and that's the real thing that people are like, oh, I totally want this year's hoodie or t-shirt. So there's a bunch of different levels from $25 all the way up to like an honorary team member. But our most popular one is the gold package, I think is what it's called. And it has the limited edition hoodie, limited edition t-shirt, canvas, Vegan Strong tote bag, Vegan Strong mug, wristband, postcards, stickers. I'm going to forget some stuff. And then products from every one of our sponsors. So Plant Fusion, Healthy Truth, Ultima, What If Foods, and Unisoy. So all of these different like vegan products in there as well. And you can check it out at Indiegogo. And you can watch the video of the recap of last year. It's really, really exciting. And we would appreciate any support, even if you can just share it. That would be fantastic.
Yep, wonderful. And we'll include that link in the show notes. So if you want to support the Vegan Strong PlantBuilt team, you can easily do that. And if you want to share the link, that would be fantastic as well. I was checking out the hoodie. I was like, this is awesome. I don't know who designed it, but it's fantastic.
Yeah, it's actually Dan Austin, who's on our powerlifting team.
Yes.
His book illustrator designed this year's hoodie, and it's really, really cool.
Yep, it is. It's really cool.
Mhm.
Cool. Well, Dani, I can't wait to meet you officially in person here very soon.
6 weeks.
Yeah,
Crazy.
I know. Well, if you're interested in connecting with Dani, maybe even getting coached by Dani, where Dani is the best place for them to find you and reach out with you?
Veganproteins.com is our coaching company's website, and you can also find me on Instagram at veganproteins as well.
Okay, wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Dani, for coming on and just sharing, your story and everything. I was really excited to hear about it, so I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for having me. This was a blast.
Yep, absolutely. And for those of you who are listening, thank you so much for tuning in today. And you can expect more of these episodes as we gear up for Mr. America here in just a few weeks. So stay tuned for those episodes as they are released. Thank you so much for tuning in today. We'll catch you on the next episode. Until next time, keep thriving.